What do GPS, SaaS platforms and the Zion National Park have in common? Absolutely nothing, unless of course you're JD Carter. He's my guest, and together today we're going to unpack what it really takes to be AI ready, how to future-proof your strategy without losing sight of today's needs, and why aligning vision with execution isn't a buzzword, it's a whole job. And if you ever wondered how print infrastructure and platform strategy ended up in the same sentence, you came to the right place. But enough from me. Let me officially introduce you to today's guest. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is JD Carter. I'm the Chief of Staff and Strategy at Vasion. And Vasion is a global SaaS software company that focuses on making digital transformation attainable for everyone through our SaaS infrastructure products as well as workflow automation products. And as part of my role, I lead both long-term strategy and operational execution here at the organization.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down and joining me today. Although there are probably, 4,500 miles between us, I suspect we've both seen a certain amount of geopolitical and economic uncertainties out there, shall we say, if I'm being diplomatic. I think we're seeing it on both sides of the pond and indeed around the world. And I'm curious, how are these uncertainties reshaping your role as Chief Strategy Officer? I would imagine that it's causing a few changes there. Have you had to make any big adjustments at the company?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's interesting because I don't think the CSO's role is to predict the future, but really assess and adjust based on new information. So everything that's happening is coming at us very quickly. And it's all about monitoring what are the market trends? What are the technology shifts? What are those geopolitical changes in the landscape looking like? And then taking that and aligning those external signals to internal strategy and execution. And so for me, the role hasn't necessarily changed. What's changed is the pressure and pace that we find ourselves in. There's just so much rapid evolution happening all the time. And so it requires a much more proactive approach to assessing and adjusting strategy than more of a reactionary position, which historically, when things weren't moving as quickly, I think people took that type of an approach. But today, it's much more of a proactive approach based on all this new information coming at us.
And there is so much information. I think in the last couple of years, so many enterprises jumped on the AI bandwagon. This year, they're starting to find out that there's a lack of ROI of some of those AI projects that are maybe stuck in pilot phase. So when you talk about looking beyond that vision, what practical steps do you take to maybe ensure a strategy translates into measurable impact across daily operations? Because I think in many instances, we've almost got distracted by some of that shiny new technology and lost sight of the fact that it is all about measurable impact across our daily operations. But what are you doing differently here?
Yeah, no, it's a great observation, right? And I think really it all starts with assessing where are you at relative to accomplishing the vision of the organization, right? Where are you at on that journey? And then identifying what is the next most important mission that we can accomplish as an organization to move closer to that vision. And once you've identified that mission, starting to break that down into supporting missions that can be supported through the cross-functional teams. And what that does is help create clear alignment that will translate into day-to-day operations, moving you closer to accomplishing your mission and ultimately your vision as an organization. So it really is breaking it down into bite-sized chunks that impact that daily execution and measuring that in measurable timeframes, whether it be days or weeks, of how are we trending towards accomplishing these missions in support of our vision.
And in environments where AI and other emerging or disruptive technologies are continuing to accelerate that pace of technological change, how do you determine which innovations align best with those long-term market opportunities? Because that in itself is quite a challenge, right?
It really is. And I think AI is moving at a pace that's faster than most companies can comprehend or adapt to. And so for me, as we've been assessing our strategy, it's all about understanding what are the steps or stages that companies have to go through to become AI ready. That will help inform us as to what are those longer term market opportunities ahead of us. And so as we look at that, I think there's, 5 or 6 different phases that they have to go through, or preparatory items that they have to check off the list. First is you have to digitize and centralize all of your documents and data as an organization. And then once you've done that, you have to go through and clean and structure all of that data so it can become usable by these LLMs and AI agents. But not only that, it's looking at and assessing and saying, what manual or repetitive workflows do I have that I could start to automate to then free up time for my workforce to then become more skilled in those skills that are required for the new AI world? And then also companies need to look and say, how am I modernizing my infrastructure to make it scalable and adaptable and connectable? Because what we have to do is we have to take and build in interoperability across our tech stack. So think about breaking down silos between systems like your HRIS or your ERP or your CRM. Those systems are going to need to have to talk together so that the data can flow freely across those systems to enable you as an AI company to leverage all of that data and information and create what we call as orchestrated automation across all of those systems. But not only is that important, companies are really taking a hard look at building governance and access controls into all of these systems as well, so that as they start to turn on AI, they understand how it's being used and where the data is going, and that it meets not only their internal requirements, but regulatory requirements as well that they face. And so I think as we look at seeing what steps that these companies have to go through to become AI ready, that has been a good indication for us as to what we can build to meet the customer's needs as they're starting to move into this new AI first model into the future.
And I got to ask, I guess the big question here is, how do you approach balancing some of those short-term business realities with the need to build a strategy that supports growth for that AI-first future over the next 5 and 10 years down the line? And just saying 5 or 10 years down the line is almost obscene right now, because it's impossible to judge for saying how much we've seen in the last 5 years alone. But how do you get that balance right?
Yeah, it's a very critical thing for us to get right, especially as a bootstrap organization, right? It's how do we continue to focus on the short-term needs of the customer that's driving today's growth, while figuring out what are the next most important things to build for the long-term platform vision that we have into the future. So the way that we've been able to do that is leveraging our market-leading print infrastructure solution to meet the current needs of the market and customers today, while simultaneously starting to invest into R&D into our multi-product platform, where we see the technology starting to convert and consolidate into an opportunity where we can enable AI to be utilized across the organization. So really, it's been for us all about aligning strategy with the customer journey. And as we do that, we solve the needs of the customer today while building opportunity for growth into the future.
And what would you say well, one of the things I noticed before you came on the podcast is that you have a customer first and a partner first mindset, which again feels incredibly refreshing. But if we take a peek behind the curtain, what does that approach look like in practice at the company, especially during a time of rapid change and external pressures? What does that look like, having that customer and partner first mindset?
Yeah. So for me, a customer first mindset naturally leads to a partner first mindset, because the right partners to work with when you're customer centric are also customer centric partners. So that natural synergy exists when you align yourself with the right partners. So everything we do, from pricing all the way to support, is filtered through the lens of customer needs. And how do we understand what the customers are needing and what is the voice of the customer is by interacting with the customer in a continuous fashion. So we have an advisory board We send out surveys. We do a lot of one-on-one conversations with our customers, as well as hosting events, both in person and virtual, because I don't think there's any substitute for direct interaction with the customer. And then we take those exact same motions and start to apply them into our partner community, having engagement, having surveys, seeing what's working. And usually it's through the lens of the customer. And then from there, we pan back to see what are the needs of the partner and their business and operations in the context of supporting their customers. And I think that's done a really good job for us as an organization to keep that customer and partner first mindset in everything that we do.
And just to bring to life everything that we're talking about today, are you able to maybe share an example where external disruption forced a strategic pivot and how you aligned execution to ultimately stay on course? I don't expect you to name any names, but are there any examples that would spring to mind and bring to life some of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, definitely. I think one example that highlights this is, as we were having these customer conversations, we started to see a little bit of a shift in the customer demand. Many of them started asking us to support system generated print jobs or output management. So our core solution is mainly focused on end user printing, where end users hit file and print. But those same printers that these IT professionals are supporting also support system generated print jobs from systems like ERPs such as SAP or Infor, or electronic medical record systems like Epic and Oracle Health. And what we recognized as we started to have conversations around this is it was a shift or a larger theme around vendor consolidation. What they wanted to do was have a single vendor that could provide more solutions for them to simplify their technology stack. But simultaneously, as we were looking at the market, we observed a broader SaaS market trend where these ERP and EMR vendors started to release their SaaS versions of their solutions and began trying to migrate their customers over from on-prem to cloud. And this shift created a clear gap because there were no SaaS-based output management systems in the market that could easily integrate into this cloud ecosystem. So we responded by building a new output automation product on top of our existing SaaS platform that allowed our customers to be able to manage all of their print environment from a single interface, and was the beginning of our multi-product platform journey. And so this strategic pivot wasn't just based on reactionary to our customer feedback, but was also proactive alignment with where we saw the enterprise SaaS market heading.
And I always try and give everybody listening a valuable takeaway, especially business leaders. So in your view, what would you say are some of the key signals that leaders should be watching out for to ensure that their strategies remain relevant in such a dynamic and constantly changing and evolving landscape out there? Anything they should be keeping a lookout for?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think about, I like the analogy of strategy is like GPS, right? Your vision is your destination, but as you're going along your route, things are constantly changing. And to your point, the dynamic landscape we're dealing with is there's traffic and roadblocks and all sorts of things popping up. So how do we have this strategy guide us? And it has to be dynamic. Just like the obstacles we're facing are dynamically changing, our strategy needs to be as evolving. And so for me, as I look at it, one of the first signals that I'm seeing are changes in customer behavior, because we're continuously having engagement with our customers and are starting to see changes in their buying behavior. Is what we thought core to our offering not being received in the way that we anticipated? That's a really clear signal to start to reassess and look at our strategy. Another one is watching for acceleration of market trends. AI, as we've talked about, is a great example. It's not only seeing these AI solutions come to market, but it's watching the speed at which they go from pilot to production, and then comparing that against your assumptions that you've made in your strategy. And if you recognize that all of a sudden it's accelerating at a pace that outpaces what you anticipated, you're now behind and need to reassess and reevaluate that strategy. And then the other one that I see sometimes is internal friction, where the priorities that you're setting and the execution on the ground, you start to feel there's maybe misalignment or friction across teams. That's a good indication that it's time to stop, assess the roadmap, assess reality, and review your strategy.
And of course, the success of any new technology, or indeed the strategy, is often determined by the culture and the mindset of its people within that organization. So how can organizations better embed strategic agility into their culture without sacrificing focus or clarity on execution, and maybe also eradicating that mindset of, hey, we've always done it this way? Because again, the people and the culture, that's at the heart of everything too, right?
Exactly. It really is. And I think one of the things that we've done to move down this route is we've created a system that we call missions of aspirational performance. And what this is it's similar to an OKR program, objectives and key results, but it varies slightly in the way that we execute it because we've actually internalized this and aligned it with our corporate values. So this process reinforces our corporate values while also creating very clear agreement and alignment on how we take the missions that I was describing that are aligned to the vision and break those down into bite-sized chunks where the individual contributors can see the day-to-day work that they're doing and how it contributes directly to the success of achieving a mission in alignment with the company vision. And so by tying these two things together, it's not only helped to reinforce the culture, but also ensures clarity and focus on, are we working on the right things? Because strategy isn't just about direction, it's about execution. And if you don't marry those two things together, a lot of very good work can get lost along the way because they don't understand exactly how they're aligning to the corporate strategy and the direction that we're headed as an organization. And we found this to be very, very successful by marrying the values and culture to an execution system.
And on the topic of people and culture, I think there is a pressure on all of us to be in a state of continuous learning. And you're someone that's helping lead the way here. So I've got to ask, where or how do you self-educate? How do you keep on top of this stuff? Any tips or advice or anything you can share around how you keep up to speed?
Yeah, definitely. So I've kind of over the years developed a personal system of self-education, and it really breaks down into three categories: formal, informal, and mentor-based. And so from a formal education perspective, I believe there's a lot of value in formal education programs. In fact, I just completed a 10-month CSO certification through Wharton Business School, which was a great opportunity. So finding formal opportunities to create space for education. And then informal, podcasts like this, articles, books, always reading and learning and doing different things is important from a learning perspective. And then mentor-based learning. I think that it's a really valuable to have a strong mentor network that you can pull on to not only learn from their experience, but more importantly, work through saying, how do we apply that historical experience to the specific case that I find myself in today, and be able to learn from the wisdom of others through those mentors. So it really breaks down into those three categories: formal, informal, and mentor-based education and learning.
Wow, fantastic advice. Real powerful answer there. So much gold in that. And for anyone listening wants to find out more information about you, the work you're doing, the company, etc., and keep up to speed with how things are evolving there, where's the best place to point everyone listening, especially if they want to carry on the conversation we started today?
Yeah, so I think the best way to connect with me would be either through LinkedIn or on our website, vasion.com. That's VASION.com.
Awesome. Well, I'll add a link so everybody listening can find that. And I'd just love chatting with you now. Covered a lot there, from learning to look beyond the vision, considering how external factors may influence the overall company's vision and drive more value in our day-to-day operations, and also aligning to future market opportunities and that customer and partner first mindset. So much gold for me, especially that final answer as well. But thank you for joining me today and sharing your story. Thanks again.
Thank you, Neil. It was a pleasure.
So if your company strategy still sounds like, yeah, we've always done it this way, I think JD gave us all a few reasons to upgrade. From missions of aspirational performance to creating space for self-education, I think he showed us today how staying agile isn't actually about chasing trends. It's more about tuning in to real signals and acting with intent. And let's be honest, in a world where AI is learning faster than most humans, standing still is by far the riskiest move of all. But now, over to you. How are you adjusting your strategy in this new AI-first era? And what's your sat-nav telling you about the road ahead? Let me know. techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. But that's it for today, so thank you for listening as always, and I'll speak with you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.